They aimed and fired at her. And that's when they learned reaction isn't about speed. It's about control. The first shot cut through the fog like a warning no one heard in time. The air was thick, heavy with morning moisture and static from half-charged radios. Every sound felt too close. The crunch of boots, the click of a safety that shouldn't have been off. Somewhere between routine and disaster, someone made a decision that couldn't be undone. The echo hung there, suspended in the gray, as if the world itself needed a second to believe what just happened. For a moment, no one moved. Then, in that stillness, something else stirred, the kind of silence that only exists after live rounds break training lines. What came next wasn't chaos. It was calculation, controlled breath, measured reaction, the kind of movement born not from panic, but from instinct carved by years of repetition. If you've ever wondered how someone can stay calm when the world tilts toward violence, you're about to see it. This footage was never meant for public release. It's the kind of file stamped, reviewed, and buried under layers of clearance. But what it captures isn't classified strategy. It's human psychology under pressure. You're about to see why she was pulled from command and then reinstated. And maybe, by the end, you'll understand why control can be deadlier than speed. Dawn rose slow over the base, brushing light across the gravel and metal, softening the edges of a place built for hardness. The recruits gathered on the range, faces half awake, eyes chasing authority. Lieutenant Vale stood at the line, steady, deliberate, her voice quiet enough that they had to lean in to hear her. Reaction discipline, she said. It's not about speed. It's about knowing before you know. Some smirked, expecting the usual drill. One of them, Lieutenant Pierce, folded his arms, the corner of his mouth sharp with doubt. Or maybe it's just about shooting first, he muttered, not quite under his breath. She heard him. She didn't need to answer. The range would do that for her. She moved like the fog still hadn't lifted from her mind. Unhurried, efficient. Each motion a reminder that control was something earned, not performed. Her recruits, younger and louder, filled the space with jokes, half-serious bravado, and the thin confidence that comes before real fear. Pierce strutted between them, correcting stances that didn't need correction, his tone louder than his results. To them, he was the noise of authority. To her, just another echo waiting to fade. Vale set the drill in motion. When you hear the tone, you move. Don't think. Trust what you've trained. The beep came, sharp and clean. Some froze. Some fumbled. One moved too early, flinching at his own instinct. Vale didn't flinch. Her rifle was up, sighted, and down again before the others registered what happened. The display wasn't showmanship. It was muscle memory speaking for her. Pierce clapped once, slow. Cute trick, he said. But instincts get people killed. She met his eyes. So does hesitation. It should have ended there, a quiet contest of philosophy on an empty morning. But it didn't. Because the lesson no one wanted to learn was waiting just ahead, hiding in the static of the radios, waiting for one wrong breath to turn theory into survival. The drill began like any other, call-outs, synchronized movements, the rhythm of routine. The fog rolled back in, muting colors, swallowing edges. Radios hissed static. Then came a sound that didn't belong. A single metallic crack cut through the air, sharper, heavier, too loud for simulation. Time fractured. For a breath, no one moved, waiting for someone to call it false alarm. No one did. The echo lingered, and with it came the first pulse of real fear. Someone had fired live, and someone else was hit. Cease fire. Pierce's voice cracked across the range, raw with disbelief. But panic doesn't listen to orders. The recruits scrambled, searching for targets that didn't exist, pointing muzzles at ghosts in the fog. Footsteps collided, safeties clicked, and the difference between drill and war collapsed into one gray blur of adrenaline. Vale didn't raise her voice. She lowered her breathing. Her pulse slowed instead of spiking. Every inhale became calculation. Every exhale a choice. Through the haze, she traced the sound, the direction, the cadence, the weight of metal sliding home again. Whoever fired wasn't done. The fog shimmered with movement, a figure shifting too fast, barrel up, scanning for shapes. Vale's eyes narrowed. She read intent faster than sound. In that half-second, instinct took command. Her carbine rose, steady as a metronome, locking on the outline just as it pivoted toward her. The recruit saw only shadow and silhouette. He thought she was the threat. Fear made him faster, but not smarter. His finger tightened on the trigger. Vale's voice came quiet, barely a whisper. Don't. The word didn't stop him, but it bought her the space between decision and disaster. That sliver of time where only professionals live. She shifted, weight balanced, shoulders squared, vision narrowing until nothing existed but angles, trajectories, and the math of survival. Somewhere behind her, another round chambered. The fog thickened again, as if the world itself wanted to hide what came next. The drill had ended. The range had turned. And in that moment, every lesson she had ever taught was about to be tested by the very people she trained to stay alive. At 0.8 seconds, she's already sighted the source. The fog parts just enough for a glint of metal to betray position. No hesitation. No panic. The world slows to the rhythm of her breath. At 1.2 seconds, her carbine pivots, smooth and unhurried, before his finger even reaches the trigger. To the untrained eye, it would look like reflex. To those who know, it's muscle memory colliding perfectly with instinct, reaction discipline in its purest form. At 1.9 seconds, sound collapses. Everything external, yelling, boots scraping gravel, radios screaming static, disappears. All she hears is the inhale before recoil. Her vision tunnels, not from fear but focus, mapping the distance, the angle, the half degree that decides whether a man walks away or never moves again. 3 seconds. That's all it takes to decide everything. She moves. The shot she fires isn't loud. It's final. The report echoes once, then folds into silence. A target drops, weapon clattering across the concrete. The fog swallows both sound and shape, leaving only breathing, hers, steady and precise, like the beat of something mechanical. Then another shape lunges from the mist, weapon raised. She doesn't overreact. A sidestep, a disarm, a shove that redirects the barrel harmlessly skyward. Controlled precision. She never fires twice. She never needs to. When the noise returns, it's fragmented, orders shouted, medics called, confusion blooming across the range like smoke. Vale doesn't move toward the fallen man right away. She knows before she sees. There's a certain rhythm to guilt when it falls. The voice that called the first shot isn't panicked now. It's silent. She steps closer. The fog thins enough to reveal the uniform, the insignia, the impossible truth. Lieutenant Pierce. Her jaw tightens. No emotion, just recognition. The weapon in his hand is standard issue, but the ammunition, live, not training rounds. Unauthorized. Intentional. There's no room left for doubt. This wasn't an accident. It was an ambush disguised as incompetence. A test that turned into betrayal. Around her, the recruits freeze, processing what their eyes refuse to believe. She kneels once, fingers brushing the cold steel of his rifle, confirming what instinct already told her. He loaded it himself. The fog curls around them again, concealing judgment for just a moment longer. She doesn't speak. There's nothing to say that wouldn't shatter the fragile control holding the scene together. Her calm becomes the gravity in the chaos, pulling everyone back from panic by sheer presence. 3 seconds of clarity, followed by a lifetime of consequence. That's what separates the trained from the reckless, the disciplined from the dead. When the officers arrive, she steps back, surrendering her weapon without a word. The reports will say she reacted faster than physics should allow. But what they'll never capture is the truth, that she didn't act out of fear or anger or even self-preservation. She acted because stillness, to her, was survival, and because betrayal is loud only to those who've never learned to listen through the fog. The room was sterile, too bright, too quiet. The kind of silence that makes even truth sound rehearsed. Lieutenant Vale sat at the long metal table, hands still, expression unreadable. Across from her, the inquiry board shuffled papers that already contained the story, but not the understanding. The chairwoman leaned forward, voice clipped and formal. Lieutenant Vale, can you confirm that you discharged your weapon against another officer? Vale didn't flinch. Confirmed. A pause followed, long enough for judgment to collect itself before the next question. And can you explain why you didn't wait for a visual command before engaging? Vale's eyes lifted. Because waiting, she said, would have made this hearing about casualties, not conduct. They pressed her, as procedure demanded. Why didn't she shout a warning? Why didn't she assume misfire? Why not retreat? She answered each with the same tone, measured, factual, void of defensiveness. Because panic spreads faster than bullets, she said once. Because command can't exist in noise. Someone on the panel frowned, uncomfortable with the simplicity of truth. The military doesn't like when instinct outruns protocol, even if it saves lives. Then came the part she expected. They played the radio logs. Static, confusion, overlapping commands, and one clear voice issuing a live fire authorization that never came from her channel. Pierce's voice. The evidence spoke louder than anything she could have added. Unauthorized rounds, falsified safety clearances, and a silence on his end after the first shot. The air changed in the room. The tension shifted from scrutiny to understanding. Nobody looked her in the eye now, not out of shame, but respect. The chairwoman set down her pen. "No further questions," she said softly. Vale nodded once, almost imperceptibly. "Discipline isn't proven in gunfire," she said. "It's proven before it starts." The words hung there, heavier than any bullet, lighter than justification. They cleared her of all charges. No ceremony followed. No applause. Just paperwork and a quiet order of reinstatement, stamped and signed. She stood, saluted, and walked out without looking back. Outside, the wind moved across the tarmac, carrying the faint echo of the range somewhere far beyond the walls. Justice, in her world, never arrived with noise. It arrived with silence. And in that silence, Vale remained exactly what she had always been: composed, precise, and impossible to misunderstand. Some enemies wore different uniforms. Others were the same one. The footage ended there, but the lesson didn't. What Vale faced on that fogged range wasn't just Pierce. It was something older, quieter, and far harder to kill. The moment when fear starts speaking louder than reason. That's the real enemy. It doesn't fire rounds or draw ranks. It waits inside every hesitation, every second of doubt that turns training into chaos. Her voice came later, over declassified audio. Calm. Controlled. Control isn't about beating someone to the trigger, she said. It's about never letting fear pull it for you. To her, the battlefield wasn't geography, it was psychology. Every mission, every drill, every silence was a test of whether discipline could hold when instinct begged to break. Viewers see only the footage, a soldier who didn't panic. But what they don't see is the lifetime it takes to build that kind of stillness. Because control isn't born in combat. It's forged in moments when no one's watching. When your hand trembles, but you breathe anyway. When your pride screams, but you stay silent. When you're right, but choose restraint over recognition. Vale's world makes that lesson literal, but it belongs to everyone. Control is silent. Panic is loud. One creates order. The other ends it. And in between them, somewhere in the fog, is the choice that defines who walks out standing. Weeks passed before the fog lifted from the range, but for Vale, it never really left. The inquiries closed, the reports were stamped, and Pierce's name vanished into the bureaucracy that always swallows its own guilt. She was cleared, commended in silence, then forgotten, or so they thought. On a gray morning, her quarters were empty except for a sealed envelope on her bunk. No sender, no insignia, just 3 words printed in red. Eyes only, Joint Task Command. She turned it over once, twice, as if feeling the weight might tell her what waited inside. The edges smelled faintly of oil and dust, military paper, not administrative. She knew before opening it that this wasn't a reassignment. It was a recall, a quiet signal that somewhere, someone had decided her brand of calm wasn't to be retired yet. The voiceover would have ended there, steady and unbroken. They thought it was over. But Command just opened another file. Outside, the sound of rotors bled through the morning haze, vibrating against the window pane. The envelope lay open on the desk, blank orders, coordinates redacted. And as the blades cut through the fog, she looked up, not to escape, but to return. Because soldiers like her don't disappear when the mission ends. They wait for the next one to begin. What would you have done if someone aimed at you? Not in a story, not in theory, but in the 1 second that divides hesitation from survival. Would you have shouted, ducked, or reached for something you hoped was enough? Everyone thinks they know how they'd react until the silence before the shot turns real. That's when instinct speaks louder than thought, and fear stops asking for permission. Maybe you believe control is about speed, how fast you can draw, how quick you can respond. But Vale proved something different. Control isn't motion. It's decision. It's the breath you take before the world erupts. The choice to see clearly when everyone else is blinded by panic. And that's a test most people never face until it's too late. So now it's your move. Would you wait for the order or trust yourself to act? Leave it below, because the answer says more about you than you think. Just remember this. Real control doesn't wait for the bullet. It moves before anyone knows it should.